Over 4 years ago, Infinite Warfare Zombies was officially released, and the first map, Zombies in Spaceland, was an overall well-made experience, with some rough edges and an extremely difficult Easter egg, but I was optimistic about the game mode, and bought the season pass, because like many fans after BO3, I couldn't get enough of zombies. But, throughout the season, my interest in Infinity Ward's version of the game mode quickly diminished, as many of its rough edges continued to persist, and made the game more of a chore to actually do. I attempted to do many of the Easter eggs, but with no friends who actually wanted to play, or were even good enough to play, I just never beat any of them, and the game was left to sit in my library and collect dust. But, 4 years later, I finally buckled down, and wanted to give the game a fair, reasonable evaluation. So, I began my quest, to complete every Infinite Warfare Zombies Easter egg in solo to obtain Director's Cut. Hello there, fellow zombie slayers! My name is Stanley557, and this is a review of Infinite Warfare Zombies. The reason I chose getting Director's Cut as my method of analysis was because this was going to be a true test of the game mode's gameplay and story, as the developers locked features like Double Pack-a-Punch and Spaceland behind the egg. Just a preface, I'm a massive fan of Call of Duty Zombies, and I've been around since Black Ops 1, so I'm extremely familiar with difficult solo Easter eggs like Blood of the Dead, Garage Crovey, BO2 Origins, and Moon. The reason I chose to do the Easter eggs to conduct this analysis was because I'm an Easter egg player, and I get the most enjoyment out of the game mode through quest-based gameplay. But, with all of that out of the way, let's just jump right into the first map. Part 1. Zombies in Space Jam. Zombies in Spaceland ranks the highest out of the IW catalog simply because it feels the most like a Treyarch map while still having its own unique attributes like the arcade, Wonder Weapon questline, and location, but falters due to some rough edges, a lackluster in-game story, and a lack of powerful weaponry unless you beat the Easter egg first. But alright, let's begin. What's the story of this game mode? Willard Wyler, a famed horror movie maker and director, has been making films for over 30 years, and right before his retirement, he plans one last magnum opus. Willard handpicks 4 actors for his grand finale: Andre Wright, Poindexter Zimmerman, Sally Simpson, and Aaron Jordaniels, AJ. The opening cutscene for Spaceland is a great introduction to the story, and while the writing isn't anything special, Paul Rubens, who voices Willard, does a great job as both the narrator and primary driving force behind the plot of the story. Once inside the film, the animation is actually surprisingly clean and really energetic. The characters do a good job of fitting into their roles, and their designs look pretty good. In particular though, I love this animation of Sally stabbing a zombie with her spoons. There's a good weight to her movements, and a standout little moment I adore whenever I watch this intro. What? I'm a fan of animation, okay? I like it. When I see it, I know. Alright, let's go over the location. A theme park is always a location I've wanted to see in a Zombies map, and Lee Ross and his team knocked it out of the park with the map's design, layout, and flow. Areas seamlessly flow into each other, and the overarching pathways, teleporters, and central hub work well to give the map a unique feel of Shadows of Evil, while doing enough to separate itself from that map. Traps like the Disco Floor, Chromosphere, Rocket Test, and Iron Dragon are extremely unique and providing new and interesting ways to kill the zombie horde, while still allowing the player to work toward their specific Wonder Weapon pistol. I give the creators full praise for their location and creativity, as it's one of the map's most appealing features. They really did a standout job, I'm not kidding. To better fit the time period and immersion, the developers also gained the right to numerous famous 80s songs to be played by the DJ, David Hasselhoff, throughout your map-going experience. This is a fantastic way to keep the players immersed in your world of Spaceland. Unless you're a content creator, then it's a copywriter's wet dream. So many copyrights. Okay, now onto gameplay and map features. The coin and ticket system are great additions to the map and provide a wide variety of rewards and equipment like the boombox, sentry, Medusa device from Extinction, transponder, teleporter, and arcane cores needed for the Easter egg. The arcade corner also provides a variety of rewards like the map-exclusive cryo grenade, golden teeth needed for the Wonder Weapon pistols, and ammo bags that can refill your ammunition every 10 or so rounds when the prize kiosk refills. The gameplay loop of Spaceland is extremely reminiscent of Buried with its sandbox-like feel, while still providing a level of skill and reward for remembering certain coin combinations. No other map in the Zombies catalog provides this many equipment options at the player's fingertips. Now, the usefulness of some of these items is a different story, but the variety is still an attractive feature nonetheless, and provides plenty of replay value and experimentation that really hasn't been attempted by any other map other than, well, you know, the Zelensky trio. Lee Ross and his team went all out on their first map with 4 unique wonder weapons. Each of these pistols range from easy to complete like the Shredder and difficult like the Face Melter. But this is also a really good feature, as different pistols reward different types of player skill levels. Without a doubt, Spaceland is the best IW map created, but let's just get into what you're all waiting for probably, the flaws. One of the map's biggest flaws is ammo shortages and weapon power. Now, this is more of a fault of both the power-up system and the fact that you can't use double pack-a-punch until after the main Easter egg, which is a major flaw about the map. But let's just get into the power-up system, which is definitely one of the worst in Call of Duty Zombies history. Okay, but let me explain first. There are 9 core power-ups in IW. Max ammos, double points, insta-kill, nuke, carpenter, infinite grenades, infinite ammo, weapon upgrade, and fire sale. The major issue with this system is the power-up spawn rate. There are so many rounds that'll go by without a hint of a power-up, and if they do spawn in, you better hope it's not something useless like a nuke, infinite grenades, or a carpenter. Especially infinite grenades. I can't stress enough how useless that power-up is. I mean, come on, like if you get something like a double points, a weapon upgrade, or a max ammo, they can easily be game-changing, especially in the higher rounds, where ammo is an absolute rarity unless you beat the Easter egg beforehand to make the late game a little bit easier. Alright, before we move on, I gotta get this off my chest real quick. The character models. You load into the map, and you just think, okay, what is wrong with their faces? I mean, okay, I'm not saying the models look awful, but the main characters look like they've had their faces filled with Botox. I think Liam for the Winter said it best in one of his old IW videos.
More about the characters, because right now they're just stereotypes, you know, there's no real background to them. I want to know why this guy looks about 48 years old here, and then like 10 years old in this one, and then why he's 4 times the size and a completely different person right here. Like, it doesn't even make any sense.
Thank you, Liam. Okay, but here's the thing. The consistency between the character models and the designs between the intro, profile cards, and actual in-game models are all over the place. While it's not a major issue, it's something I've always had a problem with. Anywho, Liam makes another good point too. Part of the story is that the characters we play as are actors, so they believe the beginning of Spaceland is just part of a movie, and them assuming the identities of our characters that they're playing is a good idea. But this idea only works in the first few moments of the first map. If our characters simply believe this is a movie, well, we run into a few issues story-wise and gameplay-wise. First of all, there is no agency to our actions inside of the park, and our characters hardly react to the events around them. Again, it's less of an issue here because it's the first map, and our characters' ignorance to the gravity of events that transpired is fine, but let's take a look at a map like Blood of the Dead. Hate it or not, I think this is a good example to use. In Blood of the Dead, the premise crew becomes trapped in a twisted version of the prison Alcatraz, and unless they figure out how to escape, they'll become trapped here and have failed their mission to fix the multiverse. The minute our characters spawn in, they immediately understand the stakes involved in their predicament, and begin to react in all sorts of ways. Richtofen attempts to calm the group, and improvise a solution to the problem at hand. Dempsey is hardly able to keep himself together, and relies just as much on the strength and courage of his team as they rely on his. Takio accepts his fate, and believes the island is an eternal damnation for his sins, and Nikolai reacts very violently towards Richtofen, and blames him for trapping them there in the first place. Now, I understand the difference between these two maps is that Blood is a very pivotal point in an overarching story compared to the humble beginnings of Spaceland, but I feel the point should be made that these characters hardly react to the circumstances thrusted upon them, and while the Easter egg is a storyline of them escaping, things just kind of happen. Like, how did our characters know to bring the SETICOM pieces to David Hasselhoff and kill the aliens to collect a piece of the Soul Key? And only then do they escape to the next movie. Defending the SETICOMs doesn't exactly mean anything in the grand scheme of things, other than summon the aliens, but our characters clearly don't communicate why they must summon and kill the aliens in the first place. Alright, back to Blood of the Dead. Some of the steps are weird, and I can definitely agree with that, but they follow a general and concise story. Richtofen and the crew are left stranded on the island. Richtofen and the crew accidentally come across the warden's body. Richtofen improvises a plan to use the warden's body as a conduit to escape. Some shenanigans go down with a bird, you do some challenges that involve Ghost, and Morse code, and banjos. These events charge the lighthouse, and in turn, the summoning key. Then, Richtofen and the game get game-ended by Brutus over here, the shenanigans bird saves the day, Richtofen and the gang fight the warden, and Richtofen sacrifices himself so Richtofen can come in to save Richtofen and the gang, while leaving Richtofen to die so Richtofen can leave with the rest of the gang and escape. See, come on, what'd I tell you, it's pretty easy. Alright, I'm joking, but still, it follows a storyline and that's what makes the most sense. Now, I understand Blood is a much more complicated Easter egg than Spaceland, but it follows a logical path of Richtofen improvising an escape plan, and that's where Spaceland falters in the Easter egg quest department, and this issue was hardly addressed in later maps either. But I know what you're all thinking. Why should I care? Or what a silly criticism. Well, I care, and I feel a proper storyline is a part of the immersion of an Easter egg quest. Look at maps like Shangri-La. A concise Easter egg is one of the most appealing parts of the quest for storyline people. Or what about the opposite side of the coin, like Revelations? One of the worst issues with the egg is the randomness of the steps performed and the logic that follows. I mean, how are we supposed to know to shoot these random rocks to get bones? Come on, Blundell. Alright, back to the Spaceland. This issue can be easily resolved through, if someone like Point Dexter were to say something like, "Oh, Willard is a big fan of aliens and monsters in his movies. Perhaps the way out of here is locked within the UFO stuck within the ice of Polar Peak. If only there was some way to contact it." This would provide a through line of the narrative of the map and connect Point Dexter's knowledge of Willard's films and use them to coordinate a plan to escape. This would provide an easily understandable quest story, and the simplicity of it would actually attract more people to the game's casual themes. Story aside though, the gameplay of the Easter egg also has a host of issues, especially in solo, where ammo is an absolute rarity. In solo, these defense missions are extremely difficult and provide a true challenge. This is both a praise, as a difficult Easter egg can be hard to come upon sometimes, but also a criticism because systems like the power-up system make these steps difficult for no reason other than just because the system sucks. Alright, then there's the boss fight, which in my opinion is literally impossible with 4 players if your team isn't filled with pros. Go on, try and beat it with 4 players. Not many people can do it, and I don't even think it's possible. Just do it solo. It's way easier. In solo, the fight is much more manageable, with the entire spawn and park center being the arena. After the fight, the player finally unlocks the alien fuses for double pack-a-punch, which is a great reward, but should be permanently unlocked after the first completion. This is a major downside to the entire map's flow, and the reward would incentivize players to actually complete the egg. And while this would, lock such a useful feature behind the egg, it's already locked behind the egg in the first place, so it would just be a cool reward for return playthroughs anyways. And if someone already had it unlocked, it would enable them to make the experience easier for other players to unlock it, and that would provide much more camaraderie in the community, which I think would be a really good way to do that. This issue already exists with the Director's Cut anyways, because, you go into a public lobby, people have Director's Cut, and they basically cheese the Easter eggs for you in the first place. So, it would just make sense to do this in the first place anyways. So, why is this such an issue though? Why is having double pack-a-punch locked behind this such a big issue? Well, let me explain. Most games have a regular pack-a-punch system, and that is fine. Well, the issue persists more in the fact that the power-up system isn't that forgiving, and regular packed weapons just are weaker in IW, because the balance behind the double pack weapons is that they are a little stronger than pack weapons in Treyarch games, while regular pack weapons are slightly weaker than Treyarch's pack weapons. But because in Spaceland the fuses of double pack-a-punch are always locked behind the Easter egg, it causes an issue of having weaker guns with ammo that runs out extremely quickly, because they were intended to be pack-a-punched again. You see where I'm going with this? Well, okay, whatever. Besides all that, let's just go over the special enemies real quick. The clowns are just there, and they're decent popcorn enemies, but then there's the Spaceland Brute, an extremely difficult enemy who, at first, I was going to give a praise to because I thought he was actually pretty well designed and required actual skill to take down. Okay, half that's true. While it does take skill to slay him, he isn't really a well-designed enemy, because first of all, you can only attack him if his helmet is off, and he takes it off once you attack him enough, and if you don't kill him in that time, then he just puts it back on, causing you to waste even more ammunition. As we said before, low ammo is already a problem. This could easily be solved if you could kill him with the helmet on, but the fact that none of the damage that you do to him counts until he takes off his helmet, that's where the issue arises. Now, unlike many, well-designed enemies like the Panzer, the Margwa, or the Blightfather, the Brute is only privy to attacks once he's been dealt a certain amount of damage to him, which doesn't count towards killing him. So imagine if, for example, if the Margwa only opened his mouth once you filled him up with enough bullets, or, you could only kill the Blightfather once you've been grappled by him and shot off his tongue, a method which would be extremely dangerous and makes no sense. So why is it the fact that, once he takes off his helmet, only then can you kill him? This issue could be easily mitigated if you could just kill him with the helmet still on. But alas, I live in a fantasy world. Overall, Spaceland is still the best map in the IW catalog, but double pack-a-punch locked behind the main quest and ammo issues really brings the map down, as the power-up system is the worst in the series. Thankfully, ammo becomes less of an issue with the alien fuses being easily obtainable in subsequent maps. But before I conclude each map, I want to go over the main objective, completing every Easter egg in solo to obtain Director's Cut. Spaceland was by far the most personal out of all the maps, simply because it's an egg I've been trying to do solo on and off for over 4 years now, but I was always reminded consistently of the game's dodgy hit detection and unfair downs caused by the BO4 zombie spawn system. For those who don't know, the BO4 zombie spawn system is where the devs wanted to make zombies harder by having them anticipate your movements by spawning ahead of you. For better or worse, this feature was unanimously hated upon, myself included, and W was the first game where you can see this system. But unlike BO4, where you have special weapons and a bunch of get-out-of-jail-free cards, there's no get-out-of-jail-free cards here. You're just screwed. And overall, ammo issues made this extremely difficult to complete in solo. Then there's the boss fight, which isn't that difficult, but I swear if you don't keep a good distance from the zombies, the alien's gun Stun Blast will have you murdered in mere seconds. But that is Zombies in Spaceland. Just as good and bad as I remember it being. But while we're at it, let's get into the DLC. Part 2. Snooze in the Redwoods. Rave in the Redwoods, the first DLC map for IW Zombies, a significantly weaker experience than Spaceland, but still has enough content to justify its existence, unlike, later maps down the line. First, the story. After escaping Spaceland, our characters collect the Soul Key and are immediately teleported to the 90s and come across a rave in the Redwoods. The cutscene is also the first and only time we see the beginning of a zombie outbreak in a map-specific location, and while these maps don't take place in abandoned facilities or in trials, it's the smallest bit of world building that the storyline needed. Like, how did these woodmen contract the zombie virus? Did they drink contaminated water? Did they eat a poisoned beaver? We'll sadly never know, as the game refuses to divulge in these questions because this is a movie and these aren't real people. That's a dumb excuse to think about. The use of a movie as a framing device for your world is ingenious, and it's a shame it isn't used more throughout the season. Ironically, radios and ciphers found throughout the movie wouldn't be too out of place, as they could tell us the story of the movie world around us before our characters and the subsequent zombie outbreak arrived. Then there's this line in the opening.
Damn it! No matter. The Rave will surely end their silly little existences once and for all.
This line isn't that bad now, but if you recontextualize it with the ending, it makes literally no sense. We'll come back to the writing and Wheeler's motivations at the end. Our celebrity cameo in this map is Kevin Smith, and he does a serviceable job at being, well, Kevin Smith. The story in this map is unraveling the mystery what happened to his buddy Jay. But again, the story hardly connects to the whereabouts of the Soul Key and how to escape. But before I get into that, let's go over what makes the map good. While Rave has a significantly weaker location than Spaceland, as a rave party in the middle of the Redwood Forest isn't as interesting as a theme park, the location itself is well designed. The devs clearly put a lot of work into making the details within the map feel consistent and vibrant. One of my favorite areas of the map is actually the rave party grounds. Gameplay-wise, the gem and camp challenges are decent renditions of the ticket and coin system from Spaceland, with the major difference being is that instead of tickets, you complete gameplay challenges, which is a better approach for solo play, as gaining tickets in solo in Spaceland is harder once the zombies are no longer walking. The throwing hot dogs needed to unlock the Vlad, the wonder weapon of the map, are also an extremely entertaining addition to the map, and work well to differentiate the mode from Treyarch. Now, let's move on to the Vlad and its upgrades. While not as unique as the Spaceland pistols, especially with it being a bow wonder weapon in DLC 1, I never heard of that. The Vlad's upgrade process is relatively simple, as it's just find some statues, fill them up at the rave grounds, and then fill them up again at a specific location with the Vlad, and voila, you're done already. Much simpler than the Spaceland pistols. The Ben Franklin is a pretty simple lightning bow knockoff. Fire it off on the ground, and an electric storm will take out any nearby zombies. The Whirlwind EF5 is my personal favorite bow, and extremely easy to use, as it's a nice combination of the wind staff and the charged wolf bow attack. Simply fire down a straight line, and anything in your path will be blown away. The Acid Rain, arguably the best of the four, fires an extremely large AoE attack that takes down any zombies in its lethal range, and the Trap-O-Matic, which is great at holding on the location and camping. Each bow caters to a different playstyle, and does a wonderful job at rewarding players for a much simpler task compared to the DE bows or the Spaceland pistols. Then there's the Charms, which are great side Easter eggs that provided much more content for the player to do, while providing them with unique buffs and movement options. I just wish these small upgrades were attempted on, more maps and games, as they're good rewards, and rewarding the player for doing little gameplay stuff is a good addition to the game. But alright, let's move on. Let's go on to the negatives now. The first being the Slasher. He's only encounterable in Rave mode, and during specific points throughout the Easter egg. On a side note, there really isn't any big incentive to use Rave mode unless, required to do so. So unless you like look at the pretty imagery or you're going for the Vlad, you might not even encounter the Slasher at all. Then the Slasher himself is an extremely difficult enemy to fight, as he has the unfair ability to nearly down you in one hit, but without any of the strategy or skill involved with fighting similarly tough enemies like the Margol or Panzer. Then there's the map outside of the party rave grounds. The color palette is filled with dark greens, blacks, browns, and blues. Now, the developers didn't intend for this to be a big issue, as the Rave mode adds a ton of color and personality to the map. But the Slasher's presence scares players away from the Rave mode in the first place, so for about 95% of the time you spend in the map, it's filled with dark depressing colors. The devs clearly wanted to offset the atmosphere provided by the Rave mode with the dark depressing colors of the main map, but that doesn't really work because you don't want to use Rave mode because you don't have no incentive to use it, and it just makes the game harder by spawning in a Slasher. Alright, let's move on. Then there's the Easter egg, which, while short, has its issues, especially during the first arm challenge, where you have to gib off zombie arms, and that can be difficult under a surprisingly short timer and damage level if your weaponry is either too powerful or too weak. And if you fail the challenge, the game just takes a perk from you. What other map punishes you like that? That doesn't make any sense. And then there's the Super Slasher boss fight, which simply isn't as creative as the alien fight from Spaceland. Like, you simply took an already existing enemy and just made it bulkier. What is this, Brutus from Blood of the Dead? Well, it's a good thing something like this wasn't attempted again. Oh wait, mammoths. Overall, Rave is a lesser and much more subpar experience compared to Spaceland, with many of its unique features feeling like watered-down versions of Spaceland's features. The Smiley Chainsaw is super cool though. Finally, let's go over my own run through the map. I found the challenges to be extremely difficult, as you have to find the proper balance between being set up enough to survive, the right weaponry to give the arms off, and good enough weaponry to take down the Slasher. This can be extremely difficult to balance and cause me many painful downs. But then there's the leg challenge, which is really easy as long as you build a balloon trap, 2 blue gems and an orange gem. And then the headshot challenge is just standard zombies, shoot off the heads and you're fine. Then there was the boss fight, which was a lot easier than I remember it being when I first attempted the Easter egg, but I can definitely thank the Acid Rain for that. Oh yeah, apparently Kevin Smith killed Jay and was a Slasher the whole time. Okay? Anywho, with Kevin Smith condemned to hell, our characters collect the soul key and move onward to the low poly rat map. What do I mean by that? Oh, we'll get there. Hey there everyone, something else I thought to add in while I was editing this video. So there's a continuity error between the Rave and Redwoods outro cutscene and the Shaolin Shuffle intro cutscene. For example, at the end of Rave and Redwoods when you beat the Easter egg, the outro cutscene, you see our characters, Andre specifically, pick up this part of the soul key that is, for some reason, reused because it's the part of the soul key that they very specifically collect when you beat Spaceland. And then in the Shaolin intro, it's corrected because Point Dexter grabs the soul key piece and it's a completely different piece that's the correct piece. So something I noticed in post while editing this video, so I'm back to the video. Part 3. Subway Sandwich. Shaolin Shuffle, the second DLC map in the IW season. A map I condemned 3 years ago for being tedious, lifeless, and infuriating, but with my hate-tinted goggles off, how does this stand up today? First, the story. After escaping the Rave from the Redwoods, our characters are teleported to the 70s in the middle of a Shaolin Shuffle. I don't know, man, you make the title work in a normal sentence. Again, we can infer from Willard's nefarious laughter in the intro his intent to kill our characters. Now, this is the first map where our characters actually question what's going on and how to escape. Pam Grier, our celebrity cameo, explains that the best course of action to return to the theater, and she provides a logical through-line: gain the courage, strength, and wisdom to aid her in ridding the city of the maniacal Rat King. This is definitely a positive for me, as a logical Easter egg narrative always helps to develop the story of the map's main quest. But the steps themselves are a completely different story. Also, the story of Arthur McIntosh, the Rat King, is an extremely effective introduction to the enemy of our map, whereas the aliens and Slasher just kind of appear without explanation. Alright, the map's location and setting work well with the 70s theming, and the outskirts of New York were extremely pretty to look at. I want to give the devs much more credit for the design and detail than I did all those years ago. The cheat abilities were much cooler than I remember them being, but I often found myself forgetting about them early on because the standard melee can be deadly if you accidentally run into a horde, and the shuriken starts are horribly inaccurate. But once you're past that, the level 2 and 3 abilities are really cool and really useful. The Rat King, an enemy I at first considered to be a bullet sponge, was a lot more manageable when I learned using something that wasn't the starting pistols works a lot better than on him. Who would have thought? Then there's the Pack-a-Punch quest, which also isn't as difficult as I remember it being too, and the map flow was pretty decent, but it could use an extra fast travel or two from the sewers to the disco roof. And the Easter egg wasn't even that bad once you have it down, but there are steps to drag down the experience, but we'll get to that later. I was also surprised at the expanded wall weapon variety, but common stands like the Volk are still around. Once you unlock the Rat King's lair, training and subsequent gameplay are actually enjoyable, and aside from the occasional unfair down, I was having a lot of fun. Surprising! The game's first new perk, Deadeye Dewdrops, is an amazing rendition of Deadshot. The longer the player has their sights aimed down, the more damage your weapon does. So this perk is great with weapons with extremely high clips like the Mauler, VPR, Auger, and much more. Finally, I wanted to include a segment about the characters. Through a nice side Easter egg, we now get backstories for our 4 main characters, so it's nice to see them finally fleshed out, but this doesn't really amount to anything in the grand scheme of things. While the character bios are a plus, it also puts a negative on the writing. Again, for the 3rd time, our characters are relegated to the stereotypes they are playing, and we hardly learn anything about them, their goals, and what they hope to gain from being in Willard's films, other than through the bios. These bios did a good job at establishing motivations and backstories, but aside from that, the actors remain portraying their movie characters. And some of you might say, that's not the point is to have fun, who cares about the story? Alright, that's great and all, but the story takes itself seriously, so I grade it as such. I mean, come on, Willard plans to murder our characters and use their gruesome deaths for his filmmaking, but hokey little dancing, here you guys use the boombox, zombies are dancing on screen, guys, look at this cool trap, our character's using funny little chi abilities in the 70s because it's a Shaolin shuffle. I mean, like, the story presented and the gameplay performed don't quite match up at all, and this can lead to a disconnect between the two. Now, I know I'm repeating myself, but this is an issue that plays the entire game from beginning to end. So, I know you need a story to establish your world and as an excuse to do the things you do, but then just create a different world then. What if instead of a murder plot, it's just an anthology story about the different films we're traveling through and we're just some playtester that's going through the adventure in a VR space? I don't know, this would provide the game with a world and story that doesn't contradict the gameplay presented. Alright, aside from story issues, let's focus back on the gameplay. Equipment like the Boombox Century are now obtained by hunting down and collecting Mahjong tiles and placing enough of them down to collect the reward. The issue comes just from how difficult it is to find these tiles. I mean, I accidentally came upon a Century tile during my Easter egg runs and remembered the feature even existed in the first place, but it was never one I cared enough to actually do, as it's rather difficult to locate the tiles because they blend in with the environment. But if I learn the locations, it's probably not that difficult, but now I'm getting into flashbacks of the Mahjong tiles from Die Rise, so let's move on with the Easter egg. It wasn't as bad as I remember it being, but the eye symbols and Morse code step aren't exactly ones I have an urge to redo. Then there's the Rat King boss fight, probably the only step that caused continuous restarts. Thankfully, the sewer trap exists to help kill the special rat ninja zombies that spawn in during phases 2 and 4 during the boss fight. Now, before I go on a ninja zombie rant, let's just go over the heart step during the boss fight. This is the only step I had an urge to use a Fate and Fortune card on, as the explosive touch completely trivialized this step, and yet also made it possible, as this step is difficult as butts in solo. The timer is extremely tight, and you have to make sure you don't go down due to the toxic puddle damage. Now see, that's another issue with IW. The game's either too easy, because you have to use a strategy to exploit its difficulty, or impossible, and it just doesn't feel fun to try at all. I had to practice the Rat King, Krogzilla, encrypted boss fights in boss fight mode once I realized how difficult IW boss fights were, but I'll get to that in the closing remarks. Once I practiced the Rat King and tried out some guides, I finally took him down. But this just leads to another issue with IW boss design, as I was saying earlier. It's either stupid easy if you use the correct strategy, or impossible if you use the wrong one, or if you just don't know what to do. The only fight I felt was a fair battle was the alien boss fight from Spaceland. As long as you keep a good distance from the train, you'll be able to survive a stun blast, and the constant back and forth makes this fight feel fast-paced and energetic. It's not easy, but it's not impossible either, it just takes skill. The problem with the Rat King boss fight is that the fight is either completely lopsided in your favor, or impossible because of the ninja zombies, and if you use the fan trap, then it takes away the only threat that makes it challenging in the first place. This difficulty issue is what brings down the Rat King boss fight in my opinion, because if you mess up, it can take between an hour to an hour and a half to even reattempt the darn thing. So those are my thoughts on Shaolin Shuffle, if you ignore the ninja zombies, but let's just get into why they're the worst enemy featured in the map. First of all, they can teleport if you fire at them, deal massive damage, and can straight up one-shot you if you don't have Toughen Up, and they are extremely deadly if you even attempt to run from them. While you can outwalk the zombies in IW, it doesn't exactly put you in a good position to take them out, so you have to prioritize them, and if you don't, the game might as well be over. And they begin to spawn in naturally after around 20, so unless you camp, training becomes a lot harder, and I'm a player that likes to train more than camp, so the ninja zombies bring the overall map experience down. But if you ignore them or simply quit the game before the 20s, they really aren't an issue. Okay, like imagine if you tried to attack a Catalyst zombie, and he teleported behind you and two-shot you. I know it's not a perfect example, and the ninja zombies aren't that bad, but their implementation make going for high rounds difficult if you're a player who likes to train, and an enemy that ruins a specific playstyle is exactly a whole lot of fun to go up against in the first place. Oh, and before I end this section, I need to talk about the rat step. You know the one where you throw the shurikens at the rat cages? Look at this little guy. The model is so poorly done. The movement is just the model being tilted left and right over and over again. I have no idea whether to consider this a criticism or a praise because it's so bad it's good. Then there's this Noah J clip that I'll never forget and always associate with the map.
Time here, let me go ahead and...
Noah, I love you. Don't tell my girlfriend. JK. But really though, you make my day whenever you stream, and I bet I'm not the only
Rat high
one
five.
who feels like that's true.
And if you ever hear me say on stream, rat high five, I'm always referring to this clip. Alright, now despite my lengthy criticisms, Shaolin Shuffle is a much better map than I anticipated it being, and if you ignore the ninja zombies, it's my second favorite map out of the bunch. Now, finally, let's go over my solo completion quest. Shaolin proved to be a much easier Easter egg than I thought, simply because most of the steps are time-consuming puzzles, but nothing I could not get good at. Again, the boss fight was the hardest part about the run, and I attempted the fight many times in the boss fight mode before finally completing it in a legitimate run. But that's the low poly rat map. On to the next map in the AW catalog. Bad chemistry step, the map.
Thank you, my young apprentices.
Part 4. Attack of the Radioactive Tragedy. Attack of the Radioactive Thing was again another map I didn't really attempt at the DLC's launch, as the colorization was the worst we've seen in Call of Duty history, since, World at War, and much of the early gameplay was reminiscent of an early version of Dead of the Night. A major issue I have with the map is its intense part collecting and notorious chemistry step, but we'll get to that later. First, the story. After defeating the Rat King, our crew ends up in the monster movie Attack of the Radioactive Thing. Definitely one of my favorite titles, as it pays the best homage to the era it's supposed to be representing. Our final celebrity cameo for the season, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, is in the middle of hosting a horror movie marathon, but the marathon is only hosting one movie on repeat, Attack. The framing device of the movie marathon is actually a really cool reference to the marathons like Monster Vision that ran in the 90s, where many children of the time were first introduced to movies like Godzilla, the original Night of the Living Dead, It, Terror from Outer Space, and other classics like Frankenstein and Dracula. While these films were still in syndication, marathons like these provided an easy-to-access outlet to horror history, and it's easily my favorite part of the map. Even if the homage to the marathon is contained to the intro cutscene and one building in the map. Something else the map does well is its storytelling. The toxic barrels and Krog bubbles paint a clear picture of what happened to the town of Sonova Beach, and how the Krogs, the crab frogs, were created. The boss, Krogzilla, has an extremely well-detailed model and feels a little more dynamic than I should really be giving him credit for, but I'm a sucker for Godzilla-like creatures. The weapon variety is expanded upon again, and the cleaver and crowbar are great melee weapons to keep the early game momentum going, and they are both extremely useful to the Easter egg objectives, which is always a plus for me, but I know it's a negative for others. And that's really kind of it. Maybe the training is okay, but for 90% of the zombies' experiences, training feeling passable is a low praise to give. Attack was the first map where my feelings for the map 3 years ago were pretty similar when giving it an actual chance. I'm personally not a fan of Elvira, and her quotes were cringy at best and uncomfortable at worst. The writing doesn't do anything interesting with her character. The sexual way she speaks fits the lighthearted theme of IW, but it feels like the writers are trying too hard to be more mature, and it comes off in the opposite direction. Then there's the soundstage where Elvira is hosting her show. A unique feature of the map is the ability to change the color scale from red to green to blue, and back to regular color. But the issue is that the IW engine simply wasn't made to do daytime maps, even when you change up the color schemes. The two worst looking maps are Attack and Beast, and they both suffer from the same issue of daytime not being IW's strong suit. This probably explains why the first 3 maps take place at night, as the IW engine simply isn't equipped for this time of lighting, as models look unpolished and janky around the edges. The game doesn't look awful, but this is Call of Duty, and a certain level of quality is expected of this multi-billion-dollar franchise. But look at TOG. Even on a budget and low manpower, they still managed to pump out a great-looking map. Look how beautiful that sunset looks. But that might simply have to do with Treyarch's engines being more equipped to support zombies' wacky style compared to IW's much more realistic, neon-filled engine. Now let's go over enemies. I didn't really talk a whole lot about the clown from Spaceland, the yetis from Rave, and the roller skaters from Shaolin, only their respective bosses, because these popcorn enemies don't provide much of a threat and are relatively easy to kill. The same can't be said for the Krogs though, but props to the developers for at least creating a different enemy other than a popcorn fail enemy number 37. The Krogs are uninteresting and feel like discount cryptids. They even make the same sound effects. And if you ignore the acid pool, they don't really have much to differentiate themselves from those creatures. And guess what? The acid pools are not a praise. They suck. They are annoying to deal with. While the Krogs are significantly tankier than their clown counterparts, they have a weak point in the back, which makes them easy kills. The weak point is much harder to hit in solo, so explosive weapons like the Pap Kendalls do a pretty good job at taking them out. Then there's the Krog Brute. Thankfully, unlike the Spaceland Brute, the Krog Brute is a relatively much easier enemy to kill, as he is always attackable unlike the Spaceland Brute, so that's a plus. But his blinding flash doesn't really fit well with the map's already desaturated and bleachy colors, so it can be difficult to see once the attack is performed. But I'm stretching at that point. Then there's the Easter Egg, which is the tedious fetch quest that makes Dead of the Night's gameplay loop feel like Der Eisendrache. You have to collect 6 zombie parts, 3 bomb parts, 3 pieces of glass, a punch card, 3 pieces for the chemistry table, every single item related to the chemistry step, the vial for Elvira for Pack-a-Punch, Elvira's book, the bomb code, and the second vial needed for the alien fuses. And that's not even including parts needed for the electric trap needed to charge the alien fuses themselves, and the box part needed for the freezer trap for the zombie torso. And all of that is for the Easter egg. There are plenty of other parts for buildables, teleporters, and wonder weapon upgrades. While it doesn't sound like a lot, I found myself running around the map, grabbing part after part, and much of the time, you'll find parts for traps and buildables and Easter eggs, and if you aren't paying attention, many of them simply just blend together, and it's hard to tell which is which at that point. The difference between this collectathon and Dead of the Night's collectathon is that in Dead of the Night, it's over fairly early on, and gives you access to unique map features like the silver bullet table and the wonder weapon and its upgrades. But in Attack, it's a collectathon from the beginning of the Easter egg to the boss fight, which is an issue within itself. The Easter egg is basically just 4 steps. Open Pack-a-Punch, get the garage keys, perform the proper chemistry, and the boss fight. It doesn't sound like a lot, but there are plenty of tedious steps in between. For example, let me explain how to solve the chemistry step. You must find out which color to change the map to. Take pictures of these chalkboards when they're in the correct color, enter the numbers into a website online, wait for a battery to spawn in, go up to a radio, one of the 2 radios, hope that it's the right radio, listen for the correct concoction to kill the radioactive thing, look up another website for part locations, make your chemicals and compounds, use the website where you entered in the numbers to figure out which numbers you need to enter into this machine to make your compound, and finally, you can fill the bomb with the proper compound, and only then have you beaten that step and you can move on to the boss fight. Okay, maybe it doesn't sound like a lot, but this in-game step is so tedious to no end and was only implemented in such a difficult way so that it would take the YouTubers longer to complete. That is just, it's not how you design an Easter egg. And don't think I'm not giving Treyarch crap for this either. They deserve all the crap in the world for that bone step in Rev. It is literally one of the worst hunts we've ever had, and Attack is right behind it, because we had to do chemistry for like 12 hours. Randomized chemistry, I might add. Now, for most people, Easter egg quests aren't the reason they play the maps, but I'll tell you again, it's the reason I continue to play these games, so steps like these are the bane of my existence. And if you fail the boss fight, guess what, buddy? You're doing all that work again. Then there's the Krogzilla boss fight, which isn't exactly a joy to do, as the thing simply has the ability to one-shot you during the cannon phase and the laser course section, which isn't fun in solo, where 1 down is basically the end of the game. On a side note, I didn't load the bomb code dot minigame as much as I thought I would, but I will say, the laser dot minigame you have to do to get the garage keys and spawn is pretty annoying in solo. But that's Attack of the Radioactive Thing. Let's move on to the final map. Part 5. Garbage. Easily the worst of the IW experiences, Beasts from Beyond was a map I didn't even play at launch, and subsequent micro revisits over the years weren't very welcoming, as the cryptid onslaught is quite difficult for unsuspecting players. But even when I gave the map a chance on this quest for Director's Cut, I learned it was truly as bad as I thought it was. But first, I'll go over the positives, if there's even any. Other than Attack, well, no, not Attack. Actually, no. Every single IW map has always managed to make each location feel unique and interesting, even if they aren't, as popular and cool as a French battleground, a hellscape of Alcatraz, a German castle, and a cultic arena. But the theater was well designed, and it felt like a great way to tie up the final map. The VPR being added to the wall was the best addition to the weapon selection, and the weapon was the one I personally carried with me, no matter what. But that's really it. I don't have a whole lot to say about the positives, as the negatives greatly outnumber this map, simply because this map doesn't have a whole lot of content in the first place. Unlike, most of the other maps in this game, Beasts from Beyond barely has enough content to justify its own existence, and that's a major flaw of the map. Alright, let's begin with the story. As the grand finale to our season, our crew teleports out of the radioactive thing, and into the final film, Beast from Beyond. Now, the map is a pretty good concept, an abandoned alien facility in the middle of an abandoned planet, with a teleporter that can take you back to the theater. A great way to wrap up the story. The issue comes from the map flow and enemy variety. First, the map flow. Beast is split up into 3 primary sections: the Nightfall facility, the outside area that leads to Pack-a-Punch, and the theater. These areas are relatively small, and the entire map isn't bigger than, say, Derice or Kino. But this is the main DLC in your DLC season. It doesn't have a whole lot of content or map space to justify its own existence, and while a small map isn't much of an issue, it more has to do with the content, as many of the rooms and hallways feel empty and lifeless. The map barely has enough content to make itself interesting, as there are hardly any buildables, traps, and the coin ticket systems that were repurposed throughout the season are completely absent at this point, so there's no way to experiment with the gameplay. But now let's get into the enemy selection, which is by far the worst, and it truly feels like what could have gone wrong with Revelations if it didn't have that Treyarch flair. While returning zombie decals are cool once you enter the theater, the special enemy variety is appalling, to put it bluntly. The cryptids are terribly designed gameplay enemies, as the standard scout can down you in 5 hits like a regular zombie, and the phantom no more than 3. There is no balance to account for the fast movements and jumpy personalities. They feel slapped in to draw in any Extinction fans to boost the map's sales ever so slightly, and the early game is one of the worst we've ever seen in zombies, simply because it's just a cryptid onslaught until you find Neil and activate power. You have 3 hits, and that's it. This early process is infuriating, and without attachments on your OSA, you'll run out of ammo before you can even make it to round 3 in solo. I've had some games where it'll simply end because the cryptid dodged my bullets and then I made another mistake, which basically just ended the game. It makes the early rounds annoying because you have to count to make sure you've left at least one cryptid to make your stride to the next camping spot, and in solo, it is not fun in the slightest. Alright, now let's move on to the others. The clown zombies are easy, but the slasher is not an enemy I'm fond of, and the ninjas can easily bring the map down further. I've had runs where I mess up, I've respawned in the theater, and then a ninja zombie teleports in front of me, whom I can't kill because I have no weapons, and I can't run from because then he teleports in front of me and kills me, so then he kills me anyways. What do I do because of that? Finally, I'll touch on the rhinos and mammoths. They aren't too annoying by themselves, but put together with anything else, and they become quite the irritating threat because their charge attack can bring you to a red screen, and all it takes is one simple screw up, and that's it, you're down. Then there's the Venom, which I simply didn't bother to go for and forgot it existed until I pulled it out of the box during Director's Cut. Now, let's talk about the expanded box variety, which is a plus in other maps, but here, it is literally a death sentence. If you practice the boss fight in boss fight mode, you'll learn that all you need is the Mauler with the Sentinel variant. And, oh boy, I don't know if I'm unlucky, but I spent over 2 days of attempts, spending thousands upon thousands of points, until I finally pulled it out of the box, and beat the boss fight on that exact attempt. But that doesn't mean it's not stupid, because oh boy, do I have something to say about that cryptid boss fight. Thankfully, I practiced the mode in boss fight mode before even attempting to redo the Easter egg. The mammoths can go suck a big one and were infuriating to deal with. I went down so many times to blue flames. Like, for example, during the computer step, you have to run around the map and hold X on these very, hit detection glitchy computers to shut down the teleporters, but the aliens catch me so quickly, and they downed me so many times in the boss fight mode just trying to do it. It was so annoying. I can't stress how badly this boss fight designed, because it's all aliens. All of them. There's not a single zombie. You remember when the mode was called Zombies? Because I don't. Finally, I wanted to go over the lackluster Easter egg. Other than the Neil escort step, it's extremely simple, and the only steps of difficulty are obtaining the Entangler and that Neil escort step. But even the Neil escort step can be, cheesed. I figured out through a Codename Pizza stream that all you have to do when you hack Neil is, you just walk over this TV, use the Entangler, and then hold it on him for 2 seconds, 7 times, and then all the doors are either open, or you can just hold X to open the doors, and they never shut on you. It's so easy, and I don't know why I never knew about this. But after beating the Easter egg, I finally unlocked Director's Cut mode, completing my mission. Part 6. The end? Now, before we move on to the overarching problems with the game and its rewards, I have to talk about the ending of the story. Once our characters collect the final piece of the Soul Key, they confront Willard, who is congratulating our characters for making it out alive, and explains to them that there is more work to be done. But, thankfully, they rightfully tell him to shut up and throw him in zombies in Spaceland. Now, this would be fine and dandy if Willard wasn't playing what has been dubbed by Nick Saru as the pronoun game. Just listen to these lines.
You have no idea the magnitude of what you're dealing with. You must listen, or all hope will be lost.
You know what to do, Poindexter.
Please, I beg of you, listen for a mere moment.
Zombies in Spaceland, now starring Willard Wyler.
Please, no. You'll only make matters worse than they already appear to be. Countless souls are at stake. We must work together.
The line that gets me the most, though, is when he tells our characters to listen for a mere moment. If Willard truly wanted to get out what he was trying to say, then he would have been shouting things like, "The devil is coming for us all," or "Please, I was only doing what I was told. We can work together to stop Mephistopheles before he destroys the world." Something silly like that would have been better than these random throwaway lines that aren't helping his case at all. This feels like a completely contrived way to end the storyline, as moments like these from the Spaceland, Rave, and Shaolin cutscenes don't indicate his good-to-heart nature of the journey he sets our characters through at all.
Damn it! No matter. The Rave will surely end their silly little existences once and for all.
And throughout every map, Willard is constantly antagonizing our players, and when they escape, he acts like their survival was something he was joyful about seeing. These contradictions make no sense and easily the worst part of the story. If all they did was throw him in Spaceland and that was the end of it, then the story would have been wrapped up quite nicely. Instead, we're left with a cliffhanger that's only resolved once you beat the super Easter egg. So once you complete every Easter egg in Director's Cut mode, we'll touch on that in a moment, every subsequent time you beat Beasts from Beyond, you'll get an extra cutscene that shows what happened after the end of the Beast outro. Our characters learn that they've been tricked by Mephistopheles, as all they wanted to do was, quote, return to the theater, which is what he provided them with. They are now in the theater, and they have been returned, so they theoretically got their wish. Now, I don't know if they're implying he was the celebrity cast character all along, but whatever. Anywho, Mephistopheles tells them that they must inherit Willard's work and sacrifice more souls to him, but our characters choose to fight him, and the Mephistopheles boss fight begins. Once you beat the literal devil, our characters return to the theater, only to find out they're still unable to escape, as the theater that they're trapped in is now part of the microverse of the Soul Jar in the original theater room. Then, there's another cutscene, once you beat Zombies in Spaceland with Willard, I swear there's like 4 ending cutscenes to this thing, who escapes the film and then tells him that there is much work to be done, before ending on a cliffhanger that never gets resolved. What work? They literally just beat the devil! Their entrapment inside the theater makes no sense. In either way, how would you continue the storyline from here in the first place? This just feels like a cliffhanger written in case the game did well. Which it didn't, by the way! What is it with these studios and writing cliffhanger endings? For the love of God, just end your story when you should end your story. The only cliffhanger that makes sense was Ancient Evil, which left off in an interesting place of the story. But World War II, Infinite Warfare, Advanced Warfare, and Extinction all leave off on these half-assed endings when the stories seem more than completed. In IW, our characters escape the films and throw Willard in an endless loop of Spaceland. The end. World War II, the characters put the God King to sleep, and that should have halted the undead horde. The end. In Advanced Warfare, the zombie outbreak was stopped and Atlas was going to be brought under proper legal investigation. Story over. Extinction, the Earth is literally overrun and humanity is destroyed. Don't try and sequel bait us with Samantha Cross. Well, that's the story of Infinite Warfare Zombies, a sequel bait that will thankfully never see the light of day.
The end?
Part 7. Other issues I found with the game mode. This game has major issues with zombie spawns and aggression. The IW zombies have the aggression of BO3 zombies and the spawn rate of BO4 zombies. Not particularly a good combination. This game feels like it was designed around needing a shield, but without one, which is a major reason I went down for the dumbest of reasons. This game just feels unpolished at times, and I can't count how many times I went down to things that weren't my fault, like zombies spawning under me, or my game simply glitching out, and all of a sudden I'm inside the zombie horde itself. The power-up system, which I've already mentioned, is the worst, and something you shouldn't try to rely on, and the boss fights feel unfair and horribly balanced for solo play. And while the game might not have been intended for solo play or wasn't balanced for solo play, it's how I play the game, it's how I'm going to grade it. You can't just count out solo players all because they play alone. That's not the point. Things like the Afterlife Arcade and Mystery Box are great, but they don't fit the time period after Spaceland and hurt the cohesion of the game massively. Like, you're in the 50s, and then you walk over to the Mystery Box and you see a paper from, like, Spaceland that says, like, oh, box not here, out of order. Or you go to the Afterlife Arcade, and it's, an 80s arcade in the 50s. It makes no sense. What works about the original Mystery Box is that its basic design is timeless, and you can fit it almost in any time period or setting. Oh, okay, So let me explain a positive though. Okay, I almost forgot about the backpack system. You could legitimately replace the power-up system with it if the bags only carried ammo and money. Get rid of all those grenades. It's a good feature, but the amount of equipment in it, it makes it too much of an RNG fest to be reliable. But definitely one of the few new gameplay features that was actually helpful. Part 8. Director's Cut and Rewards. Now, before we close off with the conclusion, I wanted to go over Director's Cut and Rewards. One of the game's best features is the way that the game rewards its players. Other than Attack of the Radioactive thing, every single map rewards the player with a new reward. I mean, Attack rewards you with Elvira, but we'll get to that in a second. In Spaceland, it's double Pack-a-Punch and access to David Hasselhoff as a playable character. In Rave in the Redwoods, you get access to the Smiley Chainsaw, an extremely powerful weapon that, before a certain patch, could get you to literally whatever round you wanted simply by holding down the left trigger, and access to Kevin Smith as a playable character. In Shaolin Shuffle, you were rewarded with the ability to buy the katana found in the Black Cat Dojo for 10,000 points, and access to Pam Greer. In Attack the Radioactive thing, you get access to Elvira, and that's it. And finally, once you complete Beasts from Beyond and all the other Easter eggs, you'll unlock Director's Cut mode. This mode gives you access to 25,000 points from the get-go, all permanent perks in the specific map, except for Attack, where you're given Trailblazers despite the fact that the perk's not actually on the map, which is weird. And every gun in the box is Pack-a-Punched. This includes wonder weapons, making an Easter egg like Spaceland take less than 30 minutes, as the Pack-a-Punch, wonder weapon pistols were clearly not intended to be used on the alien boss fight, and melt them. And every time you complete an Easter egg in Director's Cut, you'll also earn a talisman. Once you complete every Easter egg in Director's Cut and collect all 5 talismans, you'll gain access to the Mephistopheles boss fight every subsequent time you complete Beasts from Beyond in Director's Cut mode. This boss fight is a lot of fun, and at time of this recording, I have yet to beat the boss fight, but it's still a true challenge of skill. And once you complete the Mephistopheles boss fight, you'll earn something else. You'll also unlock Willard Wyler as a playable character in Zombies in Spaceland. The game does go above and beyond to reward its players for completing their Easter eggs. I just wish it was a game I actually wanted to play over and over again. Part 9. Conclusion. Overall, Infinite Warfare Zombies is an extremely underwhelming game mode, and is, in my opinion, not the underground cult classic I feel its fans claim it to be. While it started off great, it deteriorated over time, feeling like a mediocre experience at best with each passing DLC. The game was only saved by actually rewarding its players for doing quest lines that aren't really too much fun to do in the first place. But I hope my rant has provided a really unique experience for someone who actually played the game and completed every Easter egg solo and still didn't like it. If you like this game, that's great, but it's just not for me. I give the game about a 6 out of 10. An overall subpar experience that simply didn't sit well with me. But I guess you could say, that's showbiz, baby. And cut. Sorry if my voice started to sound really tired and out of energy there. I did most of the recording in about one sitting when I was sick about a month ago, but that doesn't matter. If you like this video, leave a like and subscribe. We're always looking for new members to join the Zombie Slayers. But anywho, thank you for watching, and remember, keep on slaying.